So, as I said before, that this is one of the best and the most interesting times to be alive and to be black. That we are experiencing a countercultural revolution within the black experience. And a lot of the young black people who are growing up in the weirdo signs are going to be able to participate in it. That we are ultimately the third generation, the third kingdom. I'd like to begin with a passage from the Bible again. We're going to turn to Daniel 2:39 to really begin to talk about the archetype of the third kingdom and why is it the third kingdom that is going to be the most progressive and what that has to do with this countercultural shift that's happening within black consciousness. Daniel 2:39 says, "But after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth." From an archetypal perspective, there are ultimately archetypes that shape particular not only historical time periods but also generations. So you could say that the way that your parents, if your parents were baby boomers, the way that baby boomers think about the world is unique to them. The way that millennials think about the world and experience to the world is unique to them because the way that people have to live their lives within various generations are ultimately shaped by the world and the way that they have to interact with it and engage with it. And so in Daniel 2:39, it talks about how we have this third kingdom that is emerging that is going to grow up and become inferior to the kingdoms that preceded it. So you now have that happening because there are some of these belief systems that we are ultimately examining now within the weirdo science that are challenging some of these archaic and regressive belief systems of the old heads, of the generations that came before us. So, this is a really interesting time to be black and to begin to explore what that means, not only for gender nuanced people, but also for all black, young black people within this historical time period. So I wanted to kind of map out the different generational archetypes. If you look to the left in the chart, you could see that we have the hero generation, the artist generation, the prophet generation, and then the nomad generation. And now, the third kingdom, we are in the hero generation. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to break that down in another video. But essentially, what happens is that if you think about how, remember, everything is periodic and cyclical, right? That the wheel of this generational archetype turns, right? And so what usually happens is that there's ultimately an unraveling. And unraveling then leads to the emergence of the first generation, which is the hero generation. And the heroes then bring about a degree of progressivism and new ideas, and they're raising alarm about some sort of unraveling that they're experiencing. Then you have the artist and generation that then follows them. They then bring about new ideas. They kind of follow with the progressivism by producing new ideas, new forms of art, new forms of expression, and things like that. The third, or the generation that precedes that, or comes after that one, is the prophet generation. So this is the generation that kind of foresees the future. They tell us what they think is going to happen, etc., etc., the plans that they have. And then you have the last generation, which is the nomad generation, where they kind of sit and they're able to reap all that the generation that came before them had. Like, usually this is like the silent generation. So I included this. So just on a side note, I have the elevation of consciousness for Mukimne as conscious beings. And so as you see that we, our consciousness has been elevated, right? Because as black men and black women, within the gender war that they're having, that situation is uniquely theirs, that has nothing to do with black conscious gender nuanced people, that we understand love completely differently from how Black people in a collective understand love. And so that is what's led to the realization of our experiences as Black people within the weirdo signs, that we understand ourselves from a social constructionist perspective, that we are motherist. And so that ultimately then leads to this understanding of how we are love incarnate. So, as you look to the bottom, part of the unraveling is a result of class consciousness and late stage capitalism and ultimately the weirdo signs. That now, for our generation, we are now in the hero generation. The generation that came before us was the nomads. Think this is the hip hop community. Think of hip hop being in its pristine, in its prime, in its golden era. That we're coming off the backs of the hip hop community, and they're all rich now, and they are the ruling class. They are that generation. Now we are the hero generation, where you see a wider array of different types of Black people because of the weirdo science. Dr. Carl Jung says that every tension of opposites culminates in a release, out of which comes the third. In the third, the tension is resolved and the lost unity is restored. That was the image that I showed you about how, Black men and Black women, they're experiencing this shift, this understanding of where their power lies within the gender war, and how we as Mukimne, our consciousness is just elevating because we understand ourselves completely differently than how the collective ultimately understands themselves as it pertains to love and relationship. Okay, so what are some criteria or what are some symptoms or signs that millennials and Mukimne are the hero generation? One is that a lot of us experienced or grew up during a time period where America was in complete decline. That the economy that we've lived through, global shutdown, we've lived through a polarized political economy all of our lives. We've lived through pandemics. So, and stagnant wagings, housing insecurity, food insecurity, education insecurity, etc., etc. So, this unraveling is beginning to happen as we begin to become more aware of class consciousness within the collective, within our own community. You could ultimately say that since it was the communities that preceded us, that there is a lack of class consciousness because, you know, the generation that preceded us, they were focused on materialism and things like that, being rich, being wealthy, being able to cross that socioeconomic threshold and being able to participate within the ruling class. And what it has laid in its wake is, a lot of young Black people who, as the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That there is still a category of Black people who are marginalized, who are then structured at the bottom and are living in poverty and trauma. So the idea then becomes, what now happens? Like, how then are we going to then move forward, knowing that there are categories of Black people who exist that are throughout these various realms of their experiences? And we are also in a new era of Black consciousness because we begin to understand how all of these experiences shape our Blackness, shape our understanding of our gender, and who we are as people. So I'll end with this, that we are the third generation, whether you're straight, gender nuance, or whatever, that we are the Black youth, we are the millennials, we are the hero generation, and that this is the best time for us to be alive and Black, that we are leonine, we are lionized, we are leonine, and we are divine, that this is our time, this is our historical time period, this is our generation, and we ultimately get to write the rules this go round.